Okay, so ecology is a science majors class. It's a second year science majors class, which means it's a much higher level than a first year science majors class. And it's been designed to be equivalent to doing this at Rutgers or Rowan or the Drexel course. It passes for Drexel, it passes to Cornell. So it's the same material, it's the same quality that you would get anywhere else, but it does mean it's quite a bit of work. And because of that, what I've done is I've divided it up into weeks. And each week I have instructions of what you should be doing that week, and I email them to you every week. And that will help you stay on track. And I've also made for every week a little checklist. Some people like to print that off and check things off just to keep track of where they are each week. So I'm trying to help you stay organized, because organization is going to be your key to get through all your science classes successfully this semester, because you're probably extremely busy. So there was a how this course works video linked on the homepage of the course to give you some idea. I also put a navigating college video, a little video together last year when we switched everything online. So you might be interested in watching that, or you just might be old hats at this. Obviously, by now you know the syllabus is your contract that you can hold me to. If I've said something different than is on the syllabus, then it better be to your advantage that I've changed anything. So make sure that you've read your syllabus. It includes the grading system, which is a point system. It includes the schedule. There's a frequently asked questions thing. There's links. So I'll go over the syllabus briefly today, but there's more in there that I'm not going to obviously go into all the detail. The course is going to keep you busy. When I look at how much time people spend on the course material, it varies per person, but on average, it's 8 to 10 hours a week on the course, which is typical for a science class, especially an online science class where you're sort of responsible for covering everything yourself. And so the way to keep up with that for me, I set reminders in my phone to remind myself to do certain things for you guys and when certain things are happening and when they're due. And you might want to set up phone reminders for yourself, or if you use a planner or a calendar or an online calendar, just take all your syllabi for all your class schedules and start to put those reminders in, and that'll help you enormously later when you get really, really busy. So what we're doing in week one is I want you to make sure you've got your ebook and that you've paired it with e-learning, and you can work on the first chapter and the first appendix. What I have done is, because it's an asynchronous course, which means like we're not doing the lectures at certain times that you're just listening to me do them like this. I have all the lectures recorded, and they are all on YouTube. So I have a list of YouTube lectures that is linked into the links are in e-learning, but there's also an Excel file that lists all of them, that show you how long they are, show you if they go with a chapter or the lab, what week they're for, and if they're optional or required. And when I have finished today's Zoom and I load it up to YouTube, I will add that to this. So that'll be a link on e-learning where you can actually see this is updated live. So if anything changes, if I put a new version or something, this will be the links will be updated live on that list. So keeping up with the videos are great. So of course you're gonna keep up with the videos. So this navigating college one, the 7-minute one, that's a short optional one. How online ecology works, that's a useful one, but you're going to get that here. And then the introduction to ecology, that is your first chapter, and that is a short video. It is only 19 minutes long. And what that video is really doing is going over what's in the first chapter. So the chapters and the lecture videos go hand in hand. They work they work together. And that way, you're definitely getting your money's worth out of your book. And then we're going to talk about your labs because you're going to be reporting on your labs on the lab blog. And so I've got video instructions on how to make these blogs and how to write a lab report. So you can take a look at those. But obviously, those are all YouTube videos. You can access them anytime. Organization, like just make yourself a planner, put reminders in, just keep track of what you've watched, what you haven't watched. And if you set up an organization system at the beginning, you're going to be fine. It's going to be obviously a lot harder to make an organization system later in the course. So on a typical week, you're going to check your weekly instructions. All of the lectures have PowerPoint notes sheets, which I have on my OneDrive. So you have links to that OneDrive, so you can print those off if you want to make notes as you're watching the chapters. You're going to read off the lab instructions for the week and see if it's a data collection lab where you have to go outside. Most of our labs do require you to go outside. When you read the instructions for the week, check the weather for the week and just pick the day you're going to do your labs so that you don't have to go out in the middle of Hurricane Ida to do your labs. You're going to read your chapters every week. If you don't attend these Zoom meetings, you can watch the recorded meetings because those will sort of let you know if I've seen something that people have been confused by, clarifying it or correcting something. And then watch your videos that go with your chapter. When I do the chapter videos, I tell you what review questions I expect you to be able to answer in those chapters. There's questions at the end of each section of a chapter, and there's questions at the ends of the chapter. And I don't cover all the chapters thoroughly, and not all the questions are great. So I tell you which ones you should be ready to answer on the exam. And the students that do best in this course are ones that have obviously watched the lecture videos, read the book, done the practice questions in the book, but then do these extra review questions and have them in front of them, because your exams are going to be open notes, open book. And if you've already worked through some of these questions, some of them will pop back up onto the exam, or something similar to it will pop up on the exam. And that's your best way to prepare for the exam. So if you're working on the chapters and you get confused by something, or you don't know if you're on the right track, just ask for a Zoom or send me an email and we can go over anything that you're confused about. On a typical week, you're going to do your lab. You'll update your lab blog. There's lab assignments that when you finished your lab and you've updated your blog, you'll do the assignment. It basically alerts me to the fact that you've updated your blog, and I go to it and I look at it and I give you the grade for the lab. And then you're also going to be reading one scientific paper related to ecology. And so you're going to keep a blog on that. And so I have suggestions every week of what to update on that blog so that it's not something you leave to the end of the semester. And then you're going to be reviewing other people's blogs, and they're going to be reviewing your blogs, and you're going to provide feedback to each other. And then for full lab reports, so these little lab assignments are weekly lab assignments with your blog. You're also writing full lab reports. You're required to write 2 full lab reports, and you get to pick which 2 labs you want to write your full lab reports on. And we're going to talk in detail about these lab reports today. And so you can start thinking about as you're doing the labs, which ones you like, or that you're most comfortable with, that you're going to write up as your full lab reports. Your full lab reports, after they're graded, you have a chance to revise them and resubmit them for additional points, which is usually how we learn how to fix things, is by rewriting them, getting some feedback. So that was sort of like a typical week. There are atypical weeks. There are weeks where we have exams and things due, and these are the important dates, and they're all in the syllabus schedule. They're on the homepage of e-learning, and these are the ones that you may want to put into your phone, because these are kind of like the hard deadlines for things. So the first lecture module, which has 4 chapters that are all covered for the first exam, all have to be done by September 26th. And then the first exam is on September 28th. And the first lab report is due October 10th. So those are big things. So make sure that you keep track and that you know when these big things are happening. And because I don't want you to fall behind. There's no extensions given on the exams, and there's no extensions given on the lab reports because I have to have time to grade them, and then you get a chance to revise them and I grade them again, and we can't leave everything all kind of to the end of the semester. And you guys are here today, so you're obviously trying to get on track at the very beginning. And then even if you have an exam on one week, you'll find I'll send you the list of instructions because you might have an exam that week, but you also have still to do your lab that week, and you might have other things for updating your scientific paper blog and things like that. So there's a lot to keep track of. So it's my job to make sure that I make sure that it's very clear when things are due. I won't be changing these due dates so that you can count on it and know when everything has to be done by. All right. So I'm going to go over the syllabus because we have to do that, and what the e-learning site looks like and what the ebook looks like. And so I'm just going to get out of this PowerPoint and I'm going to go on. I downloaded the syllabus here. So when I've posted my syllabus to you on e-learning, it's a live document, which means if I had made any mistakes on it, I could go back in and fix it. But you should be able to print it out now. I think it's all fine. And that way you've got that. If you're transferring the credits to a university and they need a copy of the syllabus, you've got the syllabus now. So make sure you should keep all your syllabi just in case you ever have any transfer issues. You can make sure they are passed along. So I am ending the course on December 3rd. Officially, it ends December 10th, but I find that at the end of the term, they don't give us enough time to grade, and students are packing in finals for chemistry and physics and calculus and ecology all the same week. So I decided to push ours a week earlier. So I make the course a little heavier in the front so you can end this one a week early so that it gives you a little bit more flex time on some of your other classes. My email, sglenn@rcsj.edu, is probably the easiest way to get in touch with me quickly. And then we've got these, I'll be doing these Zooms normally going over the week's instruction on Tuesday mornings, 11 to noon. At the same link that you used this morning. But if you ever want one-on-one with me, these times, Tuesday, 12:30 to 1, Friday, 9 to 10:30, I'll be sitting in this Zoom link. This second link is a one-on-one link. And if anybody wants to talk to me, just come on in. If I'm already talking to somebody, it has a waiting room. So you just wait until I'm finished with the first person, come in, or email me and ask me for a certain time, especially if these don't work for me or for you, we can come up with a certain time. The catalog description of the course includes that Bio 2 is a prereq or co-req for the course. We build on a lot of the stuff you've learned already, like an intro chemistry and Bio 1 and 2. And so even if you haven't finished your Bio 2, even if you're in it at the moment, it still helps you with, because we do sort of assume you know all of the things from those courses. And if there's something we cover, ask about it or look it up in your bio notes just to refresh your memory on things. Like if we're talking about photosynthesis and you don't remember anything about photosynthesis, you might want to look up photosynthesis. It's a field course, which means we typically, when it's a face-to-face class, we go outside every other week. So we would go outside and collect data, and then the next week we'd analyze it. What I've done with this course, the online course, is we have a lab kit so you can go outside and actually collect the data. We're going to pool the data so you'll have class data to work with, because normally we would do that. So we will pool the data so you have class data. And then I try to get you to do the analysis the same week so it's fresh in your head. And that way we can finish the labs a little bit earlier in the semester while the weather is better, because it's not so much fun going out in the snow and trying to collect data. So it is a field course, it's a science course, and you're really looking at ecological theory, ecological processes. But by doing the outdoor labs, you kind of will see things in their natural environment instead of doing online simulations or anything like that. Your ebook is required. It's the Moles and Share 8th edition, and I use the Connect edition, which means it'll give you little quiz questions as you're working through the book. And it's cheaper if you buy it directly from the publisher link, either through the course or through the link on the syllabus, than if you buy it in a textbook store. But some people have financial aid, so obviously they like to do it through the textbook store. And the textbook store will just send you a card with a code on it so that you can pay for your book. If you're not ready to pay for your book, you can do a 10-day free trial. Some students have tried to buy like cheaper cards with the codes online, and they're just scams. The codes don't work. And so they usually are code cards that are stolen out of bookstore garbage bins at the end of the term, thinking that they will still work, but they don't work. They cancel them all before they throw them out. If you like a hard copy of the book, when you've registered for your book, you can order a loose leaf version of it that they will send you for $25. And some people like to have that in front of them. And if you're having trouble getting your book, any problems with the book, just let me know. But you will need it and you will use it. And there's points for doing the things in the book. The lab kit is available at the bookstore. Some people have bought lab kits off previous students, or they bought them from somebody they don't know. If you have done that, check with me to make sure your kit's complete, and we can probably find you anything that you might be missing from your lab kit. So you will obviously be using that for collecting the data, and it's got the lab book in the lab kit as well. So let me know if you've got any problems. Other things you're going to need to use your cell phone. It's good to have it when you're outside doing your labs. It's good to have it for keeping an eye on the weather when you're doing your labs, and taking pictures of things while you're doing your labs. And then your computer should have Microsoft Office 365, Excel, and Word on it. So you can get those for free from the college. You can download them from the portal when you sign in for free using your student account, and you can't really do the things that we're trying to do using another spreadsheet. The college says you should have a Windows-based PC, and I do find that the students who are working on Macs, the Excel on the Macs is different from the Excel on the PC, and they could run into problems, but you can always go on campus and use Excel on a computer in the library or in the computer lab. So let me know if you have trouble accessing a computer, because they are available for you. And I can certainly make sure you can get on one. So ask questions about that if you have any concerns. If you run into something with your computer using Excel, make sure you've got downloaded the most recent copy of it. Google Sheets doesn't work for our stuff, just doesn't have enough functions. All right, how do you get an A? That's what you care about, right? So it's a point system. A lot of us in science use point systems where everything you do, you get points for them, as opposed to working on a percentage system. So I've got it all laid out on every assignment on the syllabus schedule, how many points each thing is worth. And obviously some things are not worth a lot, but then they add up to a lot of points. So it's important to sort of realize that even doing the little things the reason they have points is because I think they're important to help you learn the material, and those little points will all add up. To get your A, you're going to need 910 points. To pass the course, you're going to need 650 points. And there's 3 ways really to fail the course. One is to not get 650 points. Another is you have to submit your 2 lab reports to pass the course. You don't have to have great lab reports, but you have to submit the 2 full lab reports to pass the course, because this is a requirement when you're transferring this course to the universities. They have to know that you've written lab reports. So you have to submit 2 lab reports. And if you don't submit one of those reports, you end up failing the course. Or if you were caught cheating or plagiarizing, you would fail the course. So don't do any of those things. And obviously you want to get your grades up in those high points, not down there in those low points. So the course is divided basically into 3 sections: the readings with the ebook, and the lectures and the exams add up to 570 points. So that's the biggest chunk of the course. The labs add up to 350 points. So it includes doing your labs themselves. There's 7 labs that are worth 20 points each. The lab exam is a nice reward for doing and understanding your lab. And that is open notes, so you can access all your labs on the lab exam. And then the lab reports are obviously a big chunk of points as well. Then this reviewing a scientific paper, that is worth 80 points. So when you transfer to the university, the students at the university have been reading scientific papers for 2 years when you get there. And so you're going to be thoroughly reviewing 1 ecology scientific paper for this course. You put it together in a blog, and you're going to also review other people's blogs, which means you'll learn about things from their papers as well. So if there's any questions about the evaluation, the points, anything like that, I can pause here for a minute if you want. If you're good, I'll keep blathering. I can do this. All right. This page of core competencies, you don't need to worry about that, but these are things you should be able to have expertise in when you finish a degree at college. And then these are the student learning outcomes for the course. Then I've taken that first table with the points for things, and I've just broken it down more here so that you see where the actual points are coming from, so that we've got 7 lab blog assignments. They're worth 20 points each, so that adds up to that 140 points. Your 2 lab reports, they're worth 60 points each, 120, but then your rewrites of those, where you list what you fixed on them and you made the changes, you can get at least 15 more points added to each lab report that way. So that's another 30 possible points. So you can just look down through here and you can see where your biggest points are. And these are your 3 lecture exams, are each worth 150 points. So those, obviously you want to make sure you've prepared well for those, which is reading the book, doing the questions, and watching the videos. So those obviously are where you're going to have a big chunk of points, but don't throw away these other points. They're useful. Let's see, I've talked a little bit about the book, and maybe I should show you the book. Let me put it up here. If you're in the course and you click online textbook, then you can pair your textbook that you've bought with the course, or purchase your textbook if you haven't already purchased the textbook. If I go to the textbook, then you'll see that it's set up with 3 modules which go with the 3 exams. So your first module has 9 items in it. And if you look at the due dates on these, they're all due on September 26th. So I will tell you, like, do chapter 1 this week. But if you haven't got chapter 1 this week, it's still available for you next week. So each week you've got a chapter and you've got one of these investigating the evidence ones. And so if I click on the chapter, and it tells me about how long it's going to take me to read this chapter. The chapters are dense. There's a lot of information in the chapters. So, let me go back to reading here. So if you're busy reading your chapter, you open it up and you see it's all faint like this. If you just click on it, it all goes clear so you can read it. If these highlights are bothering you, you can turn them off so that you can just focus on what you want to focus, or you can turn them back on again. It's up to you. But these relate to some of the questions, so that's why they have them highlighted. And so, I've read this first page, then I click on this next page. I can go to the next part of the chapter. Once again, I click on it and it appears. Pay attention to the figures as well, not just the text. Read the captions. And then you can see flashing in my corner here, it's got practice. And these are practice questions. And these will be multiple choice questions that pop up as I'm reading the book. And then you can if you don't recognize anything here, you can click on this, read about this. It'll take you to that part of the chapter again. And then I can pick an answer. So which of the following is an example of the goals of a researcher engaged in the science of ecology? And let's say I think a researcher will be writing poetry about a field of flowers swaying in the breeze. I can click that one and I say, am I sure about this? I'm a little unsure about this. And it says, well, that's good because you were wrong. It's not about writing poetry. It's about understanding the relationship between organisms and their environment. And I can go back and read about that in the chapter. And I can click OK, and it'll go on to the next question. And it'll ask questions to a point where it says, well, you should go back and read some more of the chapter. Or when you're reading the chapter, it say you should probably just go and read some questions now. And it tells me how many questions I have left to do. You will get the questions you got wrong. You'll get them pop up again, and you'll know the answer then. And then when you've correctly answered all the questions as you're reading, then you get the points for that chapter. And those points will automatically get transferred to our e-learning, but it's not immediate. Like it sometimes takes 24 hours. And then if I go back to read, I can read more of my chapter. And then I can go back to any part of the textbook I want to. So let's say I'm really interested in something to do with, I don't know, species diversity or something. I can go to any chapter I want to. So you have the whole book available to you. So you shouldn't have any problems accessing anything that you want in the book. The book is available to you for 6 months from the time that you started it. So if you end up wanting more information out of it, you might want to get that $25 add-on of the paper version of the book. So the first week you're doing the first chapter, you're going to read the chapter. There are questions in the chapters as you go along. The practice questions as you go along. So you might want to print out your PowerPoint notes pages and watch the video, and then you can see what I focused on. And then you can answer the concept review questions and the chapter review questions. If I go back, I'm in the species diversity one, but that'll be fine. If I look in this particular chapter, at the end of this section, it has these concept review questions. So I tell you which of these you should be able to answer. And then at the end of each chapter, I'm just going to scroll down here. Don't keep losing this. The end of each chapter, there are review questions there. And I tell you which of these you should be able to answer as well. So I don't focus on everything in every chapter. So that way you don't have to sort of waste time of trying to learn something that then I end up not actually using. Though obviously reading things is not going to be a huge waste of your time because you are going to learn. But there is a lot in every single chapter. Then there's also these investigating the evidence sections in your ebook. And they are often dealing with techniques or statistics. They don't have practice questions, but they have little questions at the end of them. And you will get questions from these investigating the evidences in your exams. So make sure that you read those over and understand those. They're not too difficult. So if I look at the first chapter, gives you an overview of what ecology is, and then it focuses on some examples of ecological research. And the whole book is set up this way, where it focuses on ecological research projects. So you'll learn about the people and how they did them and how the experiments were set up and how the statistics were calculated, things like that, on a case-by-case basis. So they give you 3 case studies of projects of very different scales, very different types of projects. And then these projects, we actually come back and refer to them in later chapters. So the one on ecology, forest birds, by Robert MacArthur, that project is referred to repeatedly throughout the different chapters, and the hypothesis he was testing is referred to repeatedly in different chapters. So it builds on some of these studies. And you will find throughout the textbook that there might be a one chapter talking about Wayne Souza's barnacle study, and then another chapter looks at the same barnacle study, but from a different perspective. So a different hypothesis or related to a different ecological idea. And then it goes over sort of the nature and scope of ecology in this chapter. So it's a nice introductory chapter, pretty general. And then the end of the sections, these are the concept review questions. So section 1.1, I think you should be able to answer question number 2. Concept review for section 1.2, questions 1 and 3. And then at the end of the chapter, I liked the review questions 3, 5, and 6. So instead of saying you should be able to answer all of them, make sure you can answer 3, 5, and 6. And something like that might pop up on your exam. So the ecology of forest birds, as I said, these warblers that I talked about, I go over them in the video, it goes over in the textbook, and then they'll appear again in other chapters. So on an exam, obviously you can refer to this material, but on the exam, I might ask you a question about MacArthur's warblers. Well, you should by then know what MacArthur's warblers are because you've learned about them in several places in the chapters and videos. And then when you're reading about them, one of the review questions, review question number 3, asks you specifically, what could you do to verify that the distinct feeding zones used by the warbler study by MacArthur that we see in this particular figure are the result of ongoing competition between different species of warblers? So how do you know what's competition? How might you examine the role of competition in keeping some American redstarts out of the most productive feeding areas on their wintering grounds? So this is a higher level question. This is taking what MacArthur did, looking at it, and then saying, well, how do we know for sure this is competition? What else could you do? What experiment could you do? How could you see if this was competition or not? This is a higher level than what you've normally been asked to do in a biology class. And so it takes some thinking, which is why I want you to sort of do these questions and think about them. And then if I ask you this question or something like this on the exam, you've already thought about it, you've already thought it through, you've already written down an answer. And so you sort of have a starting point on tackling my question on the exam. The first appendix that you're going to read for this week is investigating the evidence number 1, which is simply on the scientific method. And so the scientific method, you've learned about that in every science course throughout your education. So there's nothing new here. So read over this. And basically, when we're dealing with this testing of hypotheses in ecology, we're really looking at how do we gather the data? How do we set up an experiment? Are we doing an experiment, or are we doing an observation, or are we doing modeling? And so pay attention to sort of this aspect of the scientific method in ecology. And we really end up relying a lot on statistics for analyzing our data. So you'll learn a lot of data analysis in the labs, and you can't really do ecology without having to deal with sort of a lot of numbers, a lot of stats. So if we look at the first 4 weeks of the course, Your important dates are September 26th is when you should have your 4 chapters done. There's 22 videos associated with them. So if you divided up the chapter videos into each section has its own video. So you're not watching a 2-hour video. There's 4 of these appendices of investigating the evidence. And then in your ebook, there's one assignment in the ebook on biomes, and that'll help you sort of clarify what are the relationships between temperature and precipitation for each one of these biomes. And then you'll have done your review questions. September 28th, put this in your calendar. That's your first test. That's when you're tested on all of that material in lecture module 1. The test will be available to you. It'll open at 5 a.m. on September 28th because some people like to look at it before they go to work. And then it is due by 8 p.m. But you can open it, you can look at the questions, you can close it, you can come back later, work on a question, close it, come back later. As long as it's submitted by 8 p.m., you can come back and forth. So you can do other things or look things up or have to go to work and come back. So as long as it's submitted by 8 p.m., you're fine. In these first 4 weeks, we have 3 labs scheduled. So we're starting next week with the pollination lab, where you're going to look at pollinators visiting some flowers. So this week, just keep an eye out what the weather looks like next week when you want to do this, and keep your eyes for some flowers that you might want to look at the pollinators. The following week is the bird survey lab, where you're going to do a little survey of birds, but then you're going to use the national database, the Breeding Bird Survey national database, to analyze the data. And then the following week, last week of September, you're doing a tree lab where you're going to use the point center quarter method to look at how we measure trees. And then you're going to analyze that for determining the importance value of each tree species in the forest. And next week, what I want you to do is let me know what scientific paper you're going to be reviewing and at least set up that blog. So that'll be due September 12th. So these are your sort of important dates coming up in the first 4 weeks of the class. Let's see, I think I've covered all of that. Okay, so the pollination lab next week. You're going to get this week, get things set up for your labs. Get your lab kit, get Excel, set up your lab blog. I recommend using Google Sites because it's easy. But if you already have a blog that you keep somewhere else, that's fine. You can set up a blog on any platform you like. But for getting ready for this pollination lab next week, you want to make sure you've got the blog set up, your kit, you've got Excel downloaded, and then keep an eye out for a location and see if you can talk a friend or a family member to come with you, because it's a lot more fun to do a lab with somebody. Or you might find that you want to do it on campus and have somebody with the class. You can do them together as long as you're getting your own personal data, but you don't have to actually be out there by yourself. Now, as I said, you're going to be writing 2 full lab reports. There is a video on how to write a lab report. So let me just stop a second here, and I'm going to just show you the YouTube channel. So my YouTube channel looks like this. And so these are obviously all my videos that I've posted up here. But if you look at the playlists, there's a playlist for the ecology labs. There's a playlist for the lectures. And then you also have access to another playlist, which I can't see this way because it's a private one, but there's a link for it in the course that is the link to these videos, these Zoom videos. But if I look at the lab playlist, I'm just going to stop that. That's the how ecology works. There is the down here is a how to write a lab report video. And you have all these links in the course as well. So these slides that I have in my PowerPoint are taken from that PowerPoint. So watch that video on how to write a lab report. You may want to watch it more than once. There's also a document on e-learning on how to write a lab report. So if you're in e-learning, there's a link for your labs on the left menu there. So you can find in that link this video, the guidelines for writing lab reports, a checklist for when you've written a lab report, and common mistakes that we've seen in lab reports. Plus, you've got under there, you've got all your instructions for all of your labs. So this is from the guidelines to lab reports. This is the details of what goes into the introduction, the methods, the results, the discussion. If you have questions about formatting or anything like that, you can ask. It's basically going to be the same formatting as the scientific paper you review, and the way the reference is done and the way the figures and tables are done is the same as they look in your textbook. So what you want to use the guidelines for is make sure you've got the sections in the right order, what to put in each sections, how to do the citations, how to set up your tables and figures. And as I say, you can always revise things when I point out things that you've done wrong. Your first lab report is not going to be perfect, and you will get detailed feedback on what's gone wrong in it. Now, when you read a scientific paper, when you have a lab report that you're submitting, the sections are in this order. So you have the title, the author, the abstract, introduction, methods, results, discussion, and references. But you don't write it in that order. Like you can't write the abstract before you know what the results were. So the order you write them, and I go over this in the video, is different than the actual final report. And one of the things I have you do when you're working on a lab is come up with some hypotheses, ideas. You're going to be generating your own hypothesis for your lab report. And so as opposed to like courses that like bio courses, if you've tested a hypothesis, they've told you what the hypothesis is. This is now your chance to start getting some practice at writing your own hypothesis. And then you can look at your results and test your hypothesis with your results. And then you can write the methods. Like this is what the data I collected, this is the class data I used, this is how I analyzed it in the methods. And then you can finish up the rest of the report. So I go over that in the lab report video, and I'll talk about it again in one of these before we get closer. So watch that video. It goes over each section, and it gives you some tips on how to write your lab report. And I also have a document on common mistakes that I see on the first lab report. So make sure you read over that document, and that way you can avoid some of the things that I normally have to comment on. Make sure you submit your lab reports on time. As I say, they don't have to be perfect. You get some feedback, but you don't want to fail the course because you didn't do your lab reports. So some tips: read lots of papers. The more scientific papers you read, the better writer you are. Use the checklist that I've put on e-learning, because that's basically what I use when I'm grading your lab report. And proofread your lab report before you submit it. So make sure you have read it over. Sometimes people will copy and paste things from different sections, move stuff around, and then they forget, like they might copy and paste, but then they don't delete it from the first place, or they thought, I'll finish the sentence later, and they never go back and finish it. So just make sure you proofread your document before you submit it. They say I have people rewriting their lab reports, resubmitting them, getting the extra points. It makes a huge difference in your grades. These are the various grades from spring. On the red is their first submission, and the yellow is their second submission. And this is, you can see also the second lab report grades, the percentage of people that passed was much higher on their second lab report than on their first lab report. So I think it's useful to rewrite your lab reports. I think it's useful to do this, and it's going to make it so much easier when you transfer to university if you know how to do this properly. These are a couple of examples of lab reports that were handed in last year. I've taken off the authors' names, but this is the abstract for one of them. So you can see they've got quite a bit of detail in their abstract. They talk about sort of this is something that they've written after the whole lab report's done. So they talk about what their hypothesis is, and then what the data said and what their conclusions were. This is another one. So that was on the biogeography lab. This is the one on the mark recapture lab, and they're comparing two different indices of population size. And this is the introduction that sort of, you can see they've used some references in here to sort of set the stage for why they picked that particular hypothesis, and then talk about basically briefly in the introduction why it's important, and then what they had to do before they went into the details of the methods. So we've gone over these. Okay, look at that. That's the end. That is the end of my PowerPoint. Let me see if I had any other. I've got the YouTube spreadsheet I showed you. What else did I have open here? I think that was it. So let me just look briefly at the course. We've got the, so the announcements that I email to you are here under announcements every week. So this start here, this is your week 1 instructions here. Next week, that'll change to week 2 instructions. You can see this folder, you click on this, it's got your instructions for every single week of the course. So it's got all 14 weeks listed out here. So let's say you're on week 4, but you want to look at something from week 2, you can go and access that. Shouldn't be any difficulty to finding all your weekly instructions. If I can get there, okay. This is a link to the course outline and schedule, and this is from our schedule at the end of the syllabus. So I've just copied and pasted that in here. So maybe let me just pull up the syllabus again, because I did.
Professor, could I just ask a quick question?
Yes, go ahead.
So I'm interested to know about the expectations for the blogs. I heard you say that we only have to write 2 lab reports out of our 12 labs. So which each lab we're going to keep like extensive notes on our blog about them.
Yeah, would you like to see some blogs from other classes?
I would love to.
You would love that.
That would be great.
Okay. Before you panic about this. All right. So what I did, like in previous years, I've asked people, like, can I share their blogs? And then, so these are people that have let me share their blogs with you. So I just highlighted a couple of them. So Jen Kelly had a nice blog, which is why I highlighted this one. So in the blog, and I've given you a template for the blogs, she's made a really nice homepage for it. So you can click on any one of these to go to any of the labs. And she's talked a little about who she was. I guess she still is. Jen she hasn't disappeared or anything. And so if I go, this little menu gets auto-generated in Google Sites as well. So I can click on here for the pollination lab, or I can go down here for the pollination lab. And I go to her page on the pollination lab, and she's got a picture of her study site and just general information about the day. She put a little map in general. She didn't want to show you where she lived, but she gave a little map generally where it was. Then these were the flowers, the first flower she looked at and where it was growing, and the second flower she looked at and where it was growing. She's put in the pages from her lab notebook pictures. And then these were the results. So she looked at the information on whether the flies were attracted to purple flowers versus other colored flowers. And she basically concluded, looking at this, that the percentage of pollinators that were flies were more on the purple flowers than the other color. And these were her conclusions from that. So that she's put in one little graph that she did for the analysis. So so every lab she did this for, so that the pollination one was her own data. The tree lab, she went to this forest. This is where it was located. Here's the trees she saw. Here's her sheets from her lab book. And then these are the results of her analysis that she did. And she talks about possible hypotheses or questions you could use for a lab report. Some of these labs, we use your personal data. Some of these labs, like the breeding bird survey, you do a little bird survey. And there she was doing her bird survey. But then when we do the analysis, she took a bird survey from New Jersey and a bird survey from North Carolina. And then here was her analysis of those bird surveys. So does that help?
Yes, very much so. Thank you.
Okay, so what I'll do, I can actually, because people have agreed to share this, I can share this spreadsheet from last spring, which has got people's blogs. And there's also a page on here with their scientific paper blogs. So you can see what those look like too. And I was gonna do a Zoom next week where I talk about these scientific paper blogs. But I really love these blogs. People go to a lot of trouble to make their blogs really much more interesting than just handing in lab sheets for me. But you can see, oh, Jen Kelly again. So this is her paper that she reviewed on looking at the impact of sea level rise on tiger populations. And once again, we got divided into sections here, and she researched each person that was an author on the paper and what they did and how you could reach them, and talks about the hypothesis. And since she picked tiger paper, she has cute tiger pictures all the way through it, and the study site and stuff like that. So I will share this spreadsheet with you guys, and that way it might give you a little more confidence to see what some of the other blogs look like. Other questions? Okay, I was going back through the rest of the syllabus here, right? So the blogs here, scientific papers, I'll go over that next week, but start looking for some ecology papers. Look for something you're interested in. Just make sure it's like a scientific paper, not like a National Geographic article or a general website. You want a scientific study that you're going to be reviewing. The exams, okay, this is important. No makeup exams are administered. If you know, since I've got the exams scheduled, if you know, okay, I'm going to be away that week, or I've got a work training thing that day or something like that, you know in advance, you're not going to be able to do the exam that day, contact me. We'll arrange to open the exam for you earlier so that you can do it like the day before or the Sunday or something like that. So just let me know. If something happens during the exam and you lose power and you're not going to be able to finish it, just email me on your phone. Just let me know. So I'm not trying to be unreasonable. I just don't want to have people like not getting their exams done. So make sure that you do let me know if you're having trouble with the exam dates the way they are scheduled. So I know some people have work schedules they have to work around. So you have those dates now, so you can actually make sure you have time off. I have the exams scheduled or written. They're exactly the same as the exam I would give in a face-to-face class. So they should be able to be written in 2.5 hours. However, when people do online exams, they always take longer because they spend a lot of time looking up stuff that they already know. So if you think you're going to need longer, just make sure you have the time you need. So I'd say make sure you have at least 3 hours. But if you're prepared for it, you definitely can get it done in a couple of hours. Let's see. The readings, assignments. The assignments are submitted online. So make sure you submit them there. Don't email them to me because then they're not in my grading queue. So make sure they're submitted online. But if you want to email me something, you've got a question like, I'm working on my Excel file. Here's a picture of what's going wrong. Here's a copy of my file. Can you tell me how to fix it? We can either Zoom or I can, look at your file and help you with it. So just the final assignments, make sure you put them in correctly. Don't be tempted to cheat. There are plagiarism tools. So if I look at a lab report and I think I've seen this again, I look at the safe assign. If I look at an exam answer and I think I've seen it again, I can actually see where it's come from. So make sure you don't cheat, because that would be ruining your career, and that's not going to be worth it. Time management, I've really emphasized how you should have everything scheduled and make sure that you are keeping track of your deadlines. And I don't think anyone's ever disrupted a Zoom session with me, so I don't think that's a problem. Going outside, okay, for your labs, safety is an issue, right? Because I'm sending you off into the woods, and some people are not comfortable with that. If you want to do your lab on campus, every lab can be done on campus. If you want to know where on campus, just let me know. Sometimes I can meet you on campus and walk you to a spot that would work great for that lab. Or there might be other students that want to do their labs together. So if I have a few people that say, they're not comfortable doing this lab by themselves in the woods, can we do it in the woods on campus together? That's fine. We can make arrangements to meet up. So just let me know if you want to do that. Read the safety instructions, bring your phone with you, have water, use sunscreen, and do a tick check to make sure you haven't got any ticks on you at the end of a lab. Academic and student support service, there's advising, there's counseling, there's tutoring. If you don't know where to go for help, ask. I can help point you in the right direction. Certainly nothing in this course is serious enough to have you want to kill yourself because of ecology class. Absolutely nothing in ecology class should tip you over the edge. And if it is, make sure I know and make sure that we do something about it, because I know things can get overwhelming and some students feel very alone online for all their classes. So reach out if you need some help and help point in the right direction. Then on the syllabus is the affirmative action statement, and if allegations of sexual assault were to report those to. So this is the Gloucester campus reporting. Some frequently asked questions, and then the schedule. And as you look at the schedule, in the brackets for each thing, that's the point value for everything. So that way you can sort of keep track of what is due when. And the labs, I try to keep you on track, but you really want to make sure, you get some labs done so you can write your lab report and get that done. So just trying to keep you on track. But if you're falling behind, let me know, and I can make sure that you're still getting things accepted for full point value. If you get sick with COVID and you're in face-to-face classes, you need to contact Dr. Sue Hall, who's the medical officer for the college, and because they do contact tracing for that. Obviously online, we don't have to do contact tracing, but if you're sick for whatever reason and you're falling behind, let me know that you're sick, and we can make sure that you have a chance to get caught up on things. So that's everything in the syllabus. See what else I had open here. YouTube videos. I think that's it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Maybe. There we go. All right. And I'm here. And then I'm going to stop recording. So I'm going to